You're 38,000 feet over the Atlantic. It's hour 7 of a 12-hour flight. You doze off, wake up, and wait. Is that a different flight attendant? Didn't the guy serving you dinner have a beard? You're not losing it. And no, you didn't sleep through a crew change at the airport. That flight attendant is still on the plane. He's just not where you can see him. Because somewhere above your head, behind a door you've probably walked past a dozen times without a second thought, there's a room, a bed, curtains, sometimes even a TV, and an entire shift of pilots and flight attendants taking turns lying down while your plane is screaming through the sky at 80% of the speed of the sound. Today, we're going inside that room, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at that weird unmarked door near the cockpit the same way again. If you're watching this from somewhere wild, a layover, an actual airplane right now, your couch at 2 a.m., drop your location in the comments. I genuinely want to know where this video finds people.
Let's set the stage, because the scale of what we're talking about is honestly kind of insane. A long-haul jet like a Boeing 777 or Airbus A350 weighs somewhere around 300 to 350 tons at takeoff. That's heavier than 50 adult elephants. It's cruising at roughly 560 miles per hour, faster than a bullet for most handguns, for 12, 14, sometimes 17 hours straight. And the entire time, there are human beings responsible for keeping that machine and everyone inside it alive. Here's the problem. Humans are not built to be sharp for 17 hours, not even close. Studies on fatigue have shown that being awake for 17 hours straight impairs your reaction time and judgment about as much as being legally drunk. Let that sink in for a second. If pilots just powered through an entire ultra-long-haul flight with zero rest, by the final hours, they'd effectively be flying a 350-ton aircraft full of people in a state comparable to intoxication. And that's exactly why this isn't optional. This is why aviation law is so rigid about it. These rest compartments aren't a perk, a bonus, or some fancy add-on. They're a legal requirement, written into safety regulation, because the alternative is genuinely dangerous. So aviation had a problem to solve. How do you keep a flight crew sharp for longer than any human can naturally stay alert? The answer wasn't a pill, or more coffee, or tougher pilots. The answer was, build them a bedroom, on the plane, hidden. And here's where most people's knowledge stops. Okay, pilots take naps, cool. But that's barely scratching the surface of how deliberate, regulated, and almost military precise this whole system actually is. So how did we end up with secret bedrooms hidden inside commercial jets? Rewind to the early days of long-distance flying, back when transoceanic flights first became possible. Think early Pan Am Clipper flights crossing the Pacific in the 1930s and 40s. These journeys could take 20-plus hours with multiple fuel stops. Crews were exhausted, and honestly, early aviation safety records reflected that. Fatigue was a quiet killer that nobody wanted to admit out loud. For decades, the solution was just more crew. Bring extra pilots, let them rest in a passenger seat with a blanket if they were lucky. But as planes got bigger, think the arrival of the Boeing 747 in the late 1960s, the first true wide body, airlines realized they had something passengers didn't: empty space above the cabin ceiling and below the floor, structural space that wasn't being used for anything. So engineers asked a simple question: what if we built actual rest compartments into that dead space? By the time aircraft like the 777, the A318, and especially the Boeing 787 Dreamliner came along, this wasn't an afterthought anymore. It was designed in from day one.
Aviation regulators like the FAA and EASA formalized the rules around what's officially called a crew rest compartment, or CRC. There are different classes of these compartments depending on how separated and quiet they need to be. Class 1 being the most isolated, typically reserved for pilots. What started as "let's not have exhausted pilots" slowly became one of the quietly over-engineered parts of the entire aircraft. Now here's the part that nobody really explains properly. What's actually behind that door? Because trust me, it's weirder and cleverer than you'd expect.
Let's break this down into the simplest possible terms, because honestly, that's the best way to actually get it. First, where is it? On most modern long-haul jets, there are two of these hidden zones. One near the front, just above or behind first class. That one's usually for pilots. One near the back or middle of the cabin, often above the main cabin. That one's for flight attendants. You access them through a door that looks almost deliberately boring. No big sign, sometimes an electric keypad lock. Honestly, next time you're on a long-haul flight, look for it. Once you know what you're looking for, you'll spot it immediately, and you'll be the one person on the plane who actually knows what's behind it. Behind that door, a surprisingly steep, narrow staircase, almost like a ladder, leading up into a low-ceilinged space tucked between the cabin roof and the outer skin of the aircraft. Second, what's inside? Don't imagine a hotel room. Imagine something closer to a sleeper pod on a Japanese bullet train, or if you've seen the movie The Fifth Element, those stacked sleeping capsules. Small, efficient, surprisingly cozy. Each pod typically has a real mattress with a proper duvet, not just a blanket, a privacy curtain, its own dimmable light, personal temperature control, and this is the part that gets people, a seatbelt across the bed. Yes, a seatbelt for turbulence, because even when you're asleep at 40,000 feet, physics doesn't take a break. Third, the safety kit. Tucked into these compartments, crew members have access to an oxygen mask in case the cabin suddenly loses pressure, a smoke hood, officially called a PBE, protective breathing equipment in case of fire, and a fire extinguisher within arm's reach. Even while sleeping, the crew is essentially still on standby. And then there's the interphone, basically an internal intercom, which exists for one very specific, very important reason: waking people up. When it's time for a crew member's shift, the interphone chimes and they have to physically press a button to confirm they're awake. If they don't respond, someone comes up those stairs to check on them. But here's the question that actually matters. Okay, there's a bed, so what? How do they decide who sleeps when and for how long? Because this is where it gets almost mathematical.
Let's actually run the numbers on a real scenario, because this is where the whole system clicks into place. Say you're flying Frankfurt to Los Angeles. That's a 12-hour flight, and on most airlines, that requires 3 pilots, sometimes 4, instead of the usual 2. Now here's the catch. Not all 12 hours are up for grabs. By regulation, every pilot has to be in the cockpit and alert for takeoff, all the way until the plane climbs above 10,000 feet. That's roughly the first 15 to 20 minutes. Same story coming down. About an hour before landing, everyone's back in their seats for descent checklists and approach prep. No exceptions, no naps, no matter how the rotation is going. So just like that, your 12 hours shrinks to roughly 10 hours and 50 minutes of rest-eligible time. Then add in the human handover process. Someone has to wake up, get dressed back into uniform, walk to the cockpit, get briefed on what's happened so far, and physically swap seats with the colleague they're replacing. That's roughly 10 minutes per handover, and with 3 pilots rotating, that eats up another 30 minutes. Final number, about 10 hours and 20 minutes of actual usable rest time, split between 3 pilots. That comes out to roughly 3 hours and 27 minutes of sleep each.
Here's a detail most people never think about. While the captain is up in the bunk catching that sleep, the more experienced first officer often takes over the captain's seat as the pilot actually flying the aircraft. The hierarchy literally shifts mid-flight multiple times, every single time you fly long haul. And flight attendants run the exact same rotation system, which is the answer to our opening mystery. That different flight attendant serving you wasn't a hallucination. The original one is probably 3 meters above your head right now, strapped into a bed, dead asleep. Now, you'd think a comfy pod, a tight schedule, and a wake-up alarm would mean everyone gets perfect sleep up there. And honestly, it doesn't always go that smoothly.
Here's the honest truth that pilots don't always advertise. That 3.5-hour window doesn't guarantee 3.5 hours of actual sleep. Turbulence, jet lag, your body clock screaming that it's 3 p.m. back home when the cabin lights say it's bedtime. The general weirdness of sleeping in a moving metal tube, all of it chips away at sleep quality. Some pilots fall asleep almost instantly. Others lie there staring at the ceiling of a pod the size of a closet, wide awake. And sometimes the system has to step in twice. There are real accounts of crew members sleeping so deeply that the interphone alarm doesn't wake them, and a colleague has to physically climb the stairs and wake them up. Not because anyone's irresponsible, just because exhaustion sometimes wins, even with every safeguard in place. This is the unglamorous side of the story. It's not a luxury nap pod experience. It's fatigue management, a tool built because the alternative, an exhausted crew with zero backup, is the actual emergency.
The crew rest compartment is the most complex secret on this plane, but it's far from the only one. Here's a quick-fire list of things that never make it into the safety briefing. That overhead bin you grab for balance as you walk down the aisle, the underside is specifically molded into a handrail shape. That's not an accident, it's a design feature. Flight attendants use it constantly, which is a big part of why they glide down the aisle while everyone else stumbles. Try it next time, you'll feel it immediately. Your armrest, if you're in an aisle seat, there's a hidden button near the hinge that lets it fold completely flat. It's there for emergency evacuation, but quietly doubles as extra space for your nap. Somewhere on board, there's a fire axe or crowbar for breaking into areas during an emergency. There are handcuffs for the rare unruly passenger situation. Since 2015, U.S. airlines are required to carry a defibrillator on every flight. And in the floor near the aisle, there's a strip that, in the event of smoke, actually glows, lighting a path to the nearest exit when visibility drops to almost nothing. Oh, and that superstition about row 13? It's not every airline, but on a surprising number of aircraft, the row genuinely doesn't exist. Airlines found that nervous flyers just wouldn't book it, so some simply renumbered straight from 12 to 14. Not magic, just marketing. If any of that surprised you even a little, that's your sign. Hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this video reach more curious people like you. So next time you're settling in for a long-haul flight and you notice an unmarked door near the cockpit or a different flight attendant suddenly serving your meal, you'll know exactly what's going on. There's a tiny, carefully engineered room up there, a bed with a seatbelt, a duvet, a countdown timer, and someone catching just enough sleep to make sure that 350-ton aircraft you're sitting in is being flown by someone who's actually properly awake. It's not glamorous, it's not a secret hotel suite, but it might just be one of the most quietly important rooms on the entire plane. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. So subscribe and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching this from. I read every single one. And before you go, I've put together a playlist right on your screen of other hidden parts of planes videos that I think you're genuinely going to enjoy. Tap on it, and I'll see you in the next one.